Tanx is one of my favorite ancients in the entire game. Most of his relics are incredibly strong. There's a couple that maybe not so great, but all in all, Tanx is definitely one of the best ancients in the game. We're going to go through all of his relics. I've done this with a bunch of the other ancients. And the thing that I really enjoy about making these tier lists is all the discussion that it really creates in the comment section. So let me know your opinions on all of this. Tell me live when I'm streaming. I love hearing from you guys. I love all the discussion that this is creating. We're going to start this tier list off with a bang. We got Claws. Upon pickup, transform up to 6 cards into Maul. Maul is a 1-cost card that deals 5 damage twice and then increase the damage of all Maul cards by 1 this combat. And if it's upgraded, you deal 6 damage twice and increase the damage of all Maul cards by 2 this combat. Now, an important note about Maul is if you transform an upgraded card, then the Maul will automatically be upgraded. It will hold on to that upgrade. Most of the time, you're probably not transforming upgraded cards, but sometimes along the way in your run, you get a strike that gets upgraded, and you want to transform it into a Maul when you get this event. For me personally, I feel like this relic is very underrated. I am going to drop Claws right into the deck and run dependent category. I know a lot of other people don't necessarily rank it that high. I've actually never lost a run that I've had Mauls in. That doesn't mean that you should always take Claws. The reason that I've always won those runs is because Mauls provide an incredible amount of scaling in a deck that is maybe lacking in that. If you get up to Act 3 and you don't really have a ton of scaling, maybe you have a lot of block, you have a lot of scaling in terms of damage mitigation, but you don't have a ton of scaling damage, well, you can go ahead and grab Claws, transform 6 cards into Maul cards. You can transform less than 6 if you want. You don't have to use up all 6 if you've got too many valuable cards, if you've got a thin deck, if you don't really want to transform 6 cards. You don't have to with these. You can do anything from 1 to 6. Typically, I try to transform all 6 cards. You don't really need to, as long as you have enough of them and you can cycle through the deck fast enough to get to your other Mauls, and you can just keep using them over and over again. I really like Maul cards if you have absolutely no scaling damage. It's sort of a break in case of emergency type of relic. It's not something that you necessarily always want to rely on. It's not necessarily even a situation you want to be in by the time you get to Act 3, but you know how it goes. Sometimes you have these runs and you don't have enough damage. Mauls really scale very quickly. I like this card a lot, and I think it kind of gets slept on a little bit in the community. Next up is Crossbow. At the start of your turn, add a random attack into your hand. It's free to play this turn. Crossbow is pretty damn fun. It's pretty solid, but you could do better. Tanx has a lot of really incredible relics that we're going to discuss throughout this entire video. Crossbow is very good in terms of getting some free damage every single turn. The problem is, once you cycle through the deck, those attacks are no longer free and they are just going to be there constantly. It's not like they have exhaust on them after you play them. It's not like they have ethereal. Once they're in your deck for that combat, they're gonna stay and you're gonna have to cycle through them. You could get away with this in a very specific type of build, like if you have a fat deck and you're not really cycling through it too often, or if you have a boatload of draw and you can sort of outdraw all your attack problems. Getting too many of these attacks is probably going to be a little bit of an issue. It does work in general though, because random cards in this game go really hard. There are a lot of ways in Regent where you can make random cards that are very good. The only thing with that is that a lot of times with those colorless cards where you're creating cards, you are getting to choose out of the three. Crossbow just gives you an attack that you can use for free. But if you can't cycle through the deck fast enough on the second draw, you might be in trouble with boss fights. You will also be able to kill bosses quicker because you have so many more attacks. So it's kind of a give and take. There's not really too many situations where I find myself wanting to pick crossbow over any of the relics that are going to be in the tiers ahead of it. I just think it's solid, but I also think that it could get you in a little bit of trouble if you're not sure what you're doing. If you have bad RNG, it could end with you taking a lot of damage in a certain fight, or it could end in you getting killed by the boss because they're hitting you for a ton of damage and you draw into a handful of attacks. Next up, let's talk about Warhammer. When you kill an elite, upgrade 4 random cards. Warhammer is going to be our first entry into the trap tier. Upgrading 4 random cards isn't really that great, especially if you still have a bunch of junk in your deck, like strikes, defends. You don't necessarily want those to be upgraded. Of course, card upgrades are amazing. They're important in the game. The problem with it is not just the randomness. It's also that you have to kill an elite in order to get this done. You're going into really dangerous Act 3 fights against elites. I found that most of the time, the best you could do is 3 elites in Act 3. Maybe there are times that you could do 4. I'm not really sure that I recall any of those on my experience, but I'm sure it exists. So I'm not going to say that it doesn't. But most of the time, the best you can get is 3 elites, which is 12 upgraded cards, which is amazing. The problem is you have to defeat those elites, and you might be taking a lot of damage from them. And you might say to yourself, hey, I can go rest at the campfires instead of upgrading cards because it is upgrading a lot of cards. And you'd be right. I mean, I can't really argue with that. A lot of the times in Act 3, I find myself not going to so many elites. It's kind of a little more comfortable and a little safer to go to like 1 or 2 elites in Act 3 because most of the time in this game, you don't need to kind of risk it in Act 3 as much as maybe you did in Slay the Spire 1 because there is no Act 4 yet. I find myself not taking like necessarily the hardest elite path. Most of the time, you have a ton of cards that are unupgraded in your deck. You don't necessarily want to upgrade those. It's more important to upgrade the key cards that you get to pick at campfires. And Warhammer just sort of feels like a trap in that situation. And you might end up losing to the elites if you take too many of them and there's not enough places to rest in between. There's just a lot of flaws with Warhammer. Now we got Spike Gauntlets. Gain 1 energy at the start of each turn. Powers cost 1 more energy. I'm going to drop this also in the trap tier. And I'm going to admit that Spike Gauntlets may be an S tier relic in the right situation. The problem is that right situation doesn't come along too often. If you get to Act 3 and you have absolutely no powers, then Spiked Gauntlets is amazing. It is a energy relic that you never really see the downside of because you're not playing any powers. The issue with that line of logic is that most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, you are going to have at least 1 power in your deck by the time you reach Act 3. Most of the time, you're probably going to have more than 1 power. And even if you only have that 1 power, powers are so vital that you want to make sure that you're able to play them. So with Spike Gauntlets, if you only have 1 power in your deck, you can probably get away with using it unless it's like, you know, Reaper form that's going to cost you 3 energy and you only have 3 energy up until that point. And you don't really want, and you can't really afford for it to go to 4 energy. That's a really bad situation. But if you only have like 1 power that costs 1 and now it's going to cost 2 instead, Spike Gauntlets could be very solid in that situation. But I honestly find that, at least for me, most of my runs have more than 1 power. And if you've got 2 powers in your deck, Spike Gauntlets becomes that much more expensive. If you've got 3 powers in your deck or more, I really don't think that you should take Spike Gauntlets. At that point, it doesn't really help you out because that's 3 turns where you're spending an extra energy. That means you're not really gaining that extra energy. So you technically, in a sense, don't gain that energy until like turn 4. So Spike Gauntlets is really rough in that situation. You want to make sure that you have 1 or less powers in your deck if you're going to take it. Maybe 2 or less is fine. Of course, like everything is situational in Slay the Spire 2. I just think that this is kind of a trap because if you've got any powers, which you're likely to have, it's just really not going to work out as well as you would hope. Next up, we've got Iron Club. Every 4 cards you play, draw 1 card. If you've ever seen any of my videos, you know how much I love card draw. You know how vital it is, in my opinion, on runs. I'm dropping this directly into the high value tier. A majority of the time, you're going to be able to take advantage of that, especially if you've got things like 0 cost cards. You're going to be able to probably get off 4 cards every turn. If you have a lot of energy, if you've gotten energy relics from another ancient, or you've got a bunch of energy generating cards, you're going to be able to really utilize Iron Club. This is a phenomenal way for you to draw cards. Card draw is so vital in Slay the Spire, especially if you have a ton of energy. You want to spend that energy on something, and the only way that you can spend that energy is if you're drawing into more cards and seeing more cards from your deck and getting a chance to play them. So Iron Club is really, really nice because it is basically passive draw. You don't need to waste a card slot in your deck in order to have it. You just have a relic that's going to let you draw cards constantly as you're playing the game and as you're doing just your natural thing. I think Iron Club is fantastic. It is one of the best draw relics in the game, in my opinion. Next up, we've got Meat Cleaver. You may cook at rest sites, and cooking is remove 2 cards from your deck and gain 9 max HP at a rest site. Meat Cleaver is going directly into my snap pick. I love this relic. If I come across a Meat Cleaver, I'm taking this relic and I am going to town. I am looking for the best path with the most rest sites that I could possibly find. Removing cards from your deck is absolutely incredible, and gaining an extra 9 max HP at the rest site is also really, really solid. It's like a mini rest because it is essentially giving you 9 more health. It doesn't just give you the max health, it also adds to your current health pool, and you're thinning out your deck, getting rid of garbage cards so that you can have a way to draw into your more important cards quicker. Absolutely mind-blowing if you have miniature tent, as I'm sure you could have guessed. It's just an additional option at rest sites in that case, and you want as many options as you can get with miniature tent, because then you get to do even crazier things. You get to actually rest for 30% of your health. Then you get to remove 2 cards and gain the 9 max HP, which helps you. And of course, you get to smith as well. But we're not talking about miniature tent. We're talking about Meat Cleaver. You already know how good miniature tent is. Cooking is a fantastic way of getting a chance to thin out your deck and make yourself stronger at the same time in terms of your health pool. Meat Cleaver goes absolutely ballistic in those situations. I could see an argument where people say I'd rather smith than cook, and that's totally valid. That's totally fair. But removing cards is just as strong as upgrading 1 card. Getting a chance to remove 2 cards from the deck is going to make things more consistent. I guess in that sense, you won't be as powerful because you don't have an upgraded card there, but you're going to be able to draw into your cards quicker and cleaner, and you're going to be able to get rid of maybe some extra curses that you were holding on to, some extra strikes that are still there, and Meat Cleaver is just unbelievable. Next up, we have Sai. At the start of your turn, gain 7 block. Sai is getting dropped right into the snap pick tier as well. Block is so important, and at the start of every single turn, you're going to gain 7 block for free. It is basically having an undeath, but you don't have to actually have the card in your deck and constantly fill it up with a ton of undeaths. Now, undeath is amazing. That's besides the point, but it's just an example. Sai is a free 7 block that you're gaining on every turn, no matter what. It is a way to protect yourself extra. I could see an argument for it being in high value tier instead of snap tier, but honestly, I just love this relic so much that I want to keep it in snap pick. I would argue that block and damage mitigation are more valuable than any attacks that you may have in this game. Something that every deck needs is as much solid block and weaken as they can get in order to continuously make deep runs. And Sai is passive block that you don't need to spend a card on and you just get for free at the start of every single turn. In my opinion, passive block from relics is probably the most important way for you to gain some sort of damage mitigation, because energy is so sparse in this game that you kind of need to make sure that you have some sort of relics that are going to help you out to protect you in those turns where you need to attack or you need to play your scaling cards or something like that. Sai is a great way to pull that off. Next up is Tanx's Whistle. Upon pickup, add 1 whistle to your deck. Whistle is a 3-cost attack that deals 33 damage and stuns the enemy and then exhausts. And if you can upgrade it, it goes up to 44 damage and of course stuns the enemy and exhausts. If you don't know what stun is, it is when you prevent the enemy from acting on its next turn. Ceremonial Beast. When you get it down to 160 HP, it gets stunned. It has that like weird little the stars above its head, and it doesn't attack and it doesn't do anything. Or Terror Eel, when you get it down to halfway for its HP, it has the same stun look. Whistle is a way that you can now stun the enemies. This is an amazing, amazing relic. It is going directly into the high value tier. If you can somehow get the event that takes an exhaust away from a card, then all of a sudden you can play Whistle like every turn. It's dealing damage, it's doing everything, and you're stunning the enemy constantly. They can never attack you, they can never debuff you, they can never buff themselves. They can't do anything because they're just constantly stunned. That is the pipe dream. So most of the time, you're not going to be able to take the exhaust off. A well-timed whistle during a moment in the game where you desperately need to stun the enemy because you're about to take a massive amount of damage or you're about to take a lethal hit. Well, Whistle is going to help you survive. It is such a cool card. So if you've never tried the Whistle, give it a try. You'll see how strong it is to stun the enemy on the right perfect turn. And you're just going to love that they can't do anything to hurt you in that moment. Next up is Throwing Axe. The first card you play each combat is played in extra time. I'm going to drop this into the high value tier. Replay in this game is very, very strong, and Throwing Axe is going to basically put replay on any single card as long as it's the first card that you're going to play in the combat. Don't make the mistake that I made when I first took this. I thought that it would replay a first card that you play every single turn. That's not how it works. It's the first card that you play in each combat. It would be broken otherwise. But I honestly really struggled between the snap pick and the high value tier for Tanx, because I think that the top 5 relics that Tanx has are pretty broken. Like, they're really, really strong. I think Throwing Axe is definitely one that you could drop into the snap pick tier. I think anything you take from snap pick or high value is just going to be great no matter what. Tanx's relics are just so damn good. Throwing Axe is really, really solid because you might have some innate cards that you want to play multiple times. Something like After Image is a really good shout out. Maybe you want multiple tyrannies. I'm not going to go through every innate card in the entirety of Slay the Spire, but most of the cards that you are willingly put as innate would be really, really good if you got to play them a second time. Even if you don't have any innate cards, Throwing Axe is still just very, very solid. I guess there's situations where you'd prefer having something else and you don't just want to take throwing axe all the time, even if you just get a snake bite on turn 1 and you play it twice, that's still very, very strong, even if you think that snakebite is a bad card. Either way, throwing axe is just really, really good in almost any situation. And the last relic we're going to talk about is try Boomerang. Choose 3 attacks in your deck, enchant them with Instinct. Again, I'm going to put this in the top of high value tier. Instinct is this card's attack damage is double. This can also teeter on Snap Pick. These top 4 relics are just super, super strong and are kind of interchangeable within these 2 tiers. Even these 2 might have an argument for Snap Pick because they're that good as well. It's so hard to make this tier list because Tanx is just that damn good. Try Boomerang. Sometimes you don't have attack cards that you really want to enchant with Instinct, but in most decks, there is at least one attack where it is kind of dealing the most damage in your deck or dealing like all the damage in your deck. So getting a chance to double the damage dealt from those big cards is mind-blowingly good. This is an absolutely incredible relic in those situations. Even if you just have 3 sort of like mediocre attacks, giving them double damage is really good too. It's something that you could just kind of fall back on and pick if you're offered like a couple of the other relics that you don't really like from Tanx and you're not going to be able to use properly. Try Boomerang is just safe in that situation. It's just going to just double the damage of something that's maybe mediocre, and doubling the damage is going to take it up to the next level and really just help you win fights. So this is my Tanx tier list. I think it's really difficult to rank these relics. I know it looks kind of goofy. There's so much in the Snap Pick and high value tier, but Tanx is just that damn good. Even the trap tier is really not that bad if you have the right situation for those relics, except for Warhammer. Warhammer is kind of like, I don't know. I just don't think the risk is worth the reward. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Go check out some of my other tier lists. Check out my stream. I stream 4 days a week at 9 p.m. Eastern time. You can check the stream schedule in the description below. Appreciate you so much for watching. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day.